Today, we're going to talk about how to help your organization become more resilient. Maintaining an environment where your employees feel confident to speak up, take risks, and adapt to change is critical in good times as much as during challenging ones. The key is to create a culture built on psychological safety and resilience. To find out how to do it, we've called in Anna Gullstrand, Chief People and Culture Officer at Mentimeter. Anna Gullstrand is the Chief People and Culture Officer at Mentimeter, the leading audience engagement platform, making the workplace more engaging, productive, and inclusive. She also wrote the book Facilitate, which was named HR Book of the Year in Sweden. Anna, welcome to Voices of HR.
Thank you. This is super exciting to be here.
Well, we are so excited. Now, are you actually located in Sweden?
Yes, I am. So I'm sitting here at our Stockholm headquarters, and also we have an office in Toronto, and we're opening up an office in Sydney this year.
Wow. So you have global offices that you're in charge of. I love it.
Yes.
Well, we are going to have such an incredible conversation today because there is so much in the press today about psychological safety. And I think there's a little bit of confusion on what exactly that is. And so you're going to help bring clarity to it and how your company under your leadership actually executes on that. And you're going to give our audience some tangible takeaways that I know that they're going to love and want to implement in their organizations. So let's start here, though. You have this incredible story to tell about a time in your career when you actually took over for the CEO. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So this was exactly 1 year ago, actually. And at that point, I had been working at Mentimeter for 2 years. So I entered this company as a VP People. And at that time, we were 60 employees, only in Sweden. And today we're 350. So we have been growing, typically scale up growth story. And our CEO, Johnny, he was going on parental leave. So he got his first kid and he was preparing for that. And maybe you know, or you do not, but in Sweden, when you get a kid, you actually get the opportunity to be away 1.5 years from work. And you get also like compensation from the state to do that. So it's very common that you spend a lot of time, quality time with your child. Mm-hmm. So of course he was also thinking about this, and he and his wife decided that they were going to split, so taking half a year each. And then I got the question if I wanted to be the interim CEO during this period of time. And I am a yes person, so I just said yes on the spot. But of course, I also, did some talk with my husband, thought about what it does this actually mean, and so on. But I think that in general, that has been my mindset throughout my career. That it's when opportunities arise, you should just say yes and accept the challenge.
Just say yes. Absolutely. So we talk a lot on this podcast about opportunities for HR. I mean, HR pros have so many talents and could be deployed throughout the organization. And sometimes we talk about ascending into the CEO position, but you are actually an example of someone who did it. So what were some of your greatest successes during that time, sitting in the big seat?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we in HR should be very proud of is that we have very broad business understanding, because we work with all the departments and all the department heads, and also we are in a way generalists. And I think that is what we have in common with the CEO position. So the CHRO and the CEO both have those things. A very it's a general competence in a way, because you need to understand so much about the whole business, and also that like a generalist role, basically. And also the other thing I would say is that usually CHROs are great leaders because we are so passionate about leadership, building culture, and so on. I mean, we have been studying it for years, and that's really our core passion. So of course, or not always, but we are usually good leaders and role models within leadership, which is super important as a CEO. So I think that gave me a lot of confidence going into this position. And I would say that my success was that I also saw that and also saw my limitations. So basically, I am a great team leader. So I focused a lot on building the even more high performing management team, but also trusting that all the other people in the management team, of course, knew what they were doing in a way.
Right.
So that was one thing. So not feel that I need to know everything as a leader, which I know in theory I don't need to, but that can also be hard when it's like, do I really feel that I don't need to know? Like, yes, put the trust in the team. So I think that was my greatest success, that I put a lot of trust in the team and focused on the communication and keeping the team together.
And so was the organization continuing to grow exponentially while you were sitting in that seat?
Yes, for sure. So we recruited 100 people last year, for example. So half of them was recruited during this period of time.
Wow. So did you have a foot in both camps? So were you still leading the HR function as well as sitting in the CEO seat?
So I would say yes and no. I was very clear with so what I did was that I gave a lot of extra responsibility to my talent acquisition director and people director. So they also stepped up. And I was also very clear that I will not be able to be all this during this period of time. So I would say actually that I was not very present as our Chief People and Culture Officer during this time, and that was a deliberate decision. I think a big learning for us internally at Mentimeter has been to never, people should never carry more than one role. It sounds smart on paper. Yes, I can take on this. Everyone is high achievers, but the ripple effects are usually not that good. It's better, I would say, to let other people take on more responsibility and grow instead of trying to do everything yourself.
I love that you keep using the word grow, because these types of opportunities seem to come around like once in a career. And if you look at them for what they are huge growth opportunities. So what's the one thing that you learned either about yourself or the company during this period of time in the CEO seat?
I think what I learned about, for myself, was both that I'm still, in a way, as insecure as I was when I was 20. And with that, I mean that, for example, what made me most nervous during this period was the board meetings. So I actually found myself not at all being in a position of strength or confidence when I was preparing a board meeting or speaking in front of the board as a CEO. In that context, I had a lot of ghosts in my head. So in a way, I learned that even 20 years into my career, there are still a lot of things that you need to work on within yourself to put yourself up for success. So that was a learning. Another learning was, on the other hand, that I'm capable of more than I think. So that was interesting. I also think what was interesting from more of a company perspective was that it is very good for a company to use interim positions, not only in the management team, but also throughout the company, because you get, someone comes in and looks at things in a new way and adds new perspectives. And so while Johnny was away, he was also, of course, having his growth journey, being a father. And then thought a lot about like, what kind of CEO do I want to be when I come back? So I think that was something we also have implemented more of at Mentimeter, like interim positions, people trying out new roles during a period of time. And we have noticed that people grow tremendously during those kind of positions, and they are super engaged and they get like a restart, which is super cool.
That is super cool. And it takes so much courage to do what you did. And is it something that you would recommend your HR colleagues do?
For sure. With the add-on.
There was a pause there.
Yeah, exactly. I think I did my homework, and what I meant, I had a conversation with Johnny, and I had a ramp up time of a few months where I actually very clearly like have my own like study path for myself. So I was like really digging into like business strategies, listening to different podcasts. I got more into how we do sales, how we do marketing, how we do product development. I was like, I really wanted to be on top of all that. So I had like I did my own school, so to say, before the assignment. So I mean, I think it's important to like put a lot of effort in, and specifically because if you also, I mean, one thing is being a great leader, but it's very hard to have a fruitful conversation with our chief sales officer or our CPO if I don't know anything about product development or how we operate like within sales. So that got me very excited to learn more about like our go-to-market strategy, how we do like how we sell to our users, how we sell to enterprise, and all that. So I feel now that the relationships I built with everyone else in the management team and the understanding I got, the extra understanding I got about the business and what's really important and what is really like hindering success and what people are. I have a greater understanding now how actually people in culture support business success after this interim position than I had before.
Absolutely. So you had posted a deeply personal and transparent post on LinkedIn about stepping back into your HR role after the CEO and founder returned. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yes. So you can just go into my LinkedIn and read the post. So yeah, but basically it was about that I in February, like 1.5 months or 1 month, I would say, when I was back in my chief people and culture position, I felt a lot of like negative emotions. So I felt that like very lonely, like a big void. I noticed that I was like irritated on Johnny, but for no reason. So there was like a lot of things happening within me. And then I really actually I used the toolbox we have internally. So we work with a model called SCARF model, which is from the Neuro Leadership Institute. So basically that model is about the needs I have as human being to use basically my full capacity and have access to my full brain. So that theory, for example, I used that theory to try to understand what was going on. And then when I did that, I realized like, oh my God, this change in position has triggered all my 5 basic needs as a human being, which is like status, that like on the paper I lost status, autonomy. I felt like I could like when I was in the CEO position, I had full autonomy over my own calendar, like priorities, everything. And then when I went back to my position, I suddenly had the manager again. So I like lost autonomy in a way. And then relatedness, I didn't feel as part of the management team. I lost something there because the weeks before, I had a one-to-one with everyone every week, and then suddenly I didn't have it. So it was like I lost relations in a way.
Mm.
And then, a bunch of other things. So I used that model to try to understand what was happening inside me. And of course, I realized that like these are just emotional ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to role model that this is going on inside everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like every week, every day, we have like emotions that are hijacking our brain in a way and makes us not maybe always act or be super rational. So it's a framework we work internally with. So I just wanted to role model like, hey, you can use this framework to understand what's going on and make sure that you are not taking any stupid actions based on emotional ghosts. So that was why I posted it.
Because I suspect that when you're in that vulnerable state, that you could actually self-sabotage, maybe, or start heading down the wrong path without. And I love that you used your own model that you recommend internally, the SCARF model.
Yes.
And you gave us a little bit of insight into what that was. So during this period of time, did you feel that you had psychological safety? Because you talk about that a lot within your own organization, and you have several initiatives, and the way that your culture is built is all around psychological safety. You displayed that yourself during this process.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
For sure. I mean, I would never been able to post that kind of post at LinkedIn if I didn't feel safe. Feel safe at Mentimeter, feel safe in the management team, feel safe with my relationship with my manager, Johnny, and so on. So I think this is in a way the ultimate proof. And of course, I also had like acknowledged some of these feelings in a private one-to-one. So it was not new information completely coming out from social media.
He wasn't blindsided.
No, exactly. So I think that is, but it's also actually one other aspect that's a bit related to what we do in people and culture and HR, and that is like how we actually view, for example, employer branding or social media. We want everyone at Mentimeter to feel empowered to tell almost whatever they want in different channels, because we want to show like transparency is very important for us, and we want to show that this is a company where you can be yourself, you can bring your full self to work. We of course are failing, we're doing mistakes, not everything is perfect, of course, because that's part of a job, and also that there are as many opinions about how to do things as there are people. And so we actually encourage everyone at Mentimeter to just like, for example, at LinkedIn, to be fully transparent. Like we did this, it failed, I have this feedback, like, because we believe that actually will attract the right people to our company than just putting up this facade that no one actually believes in anyway.
So can you give us some insight into the difference then between psychological safety and trust? Because I think it's one thing to tell your employees, okay, you have the safety, right? And we want you to live out our values. But the other is trust, knowing that it isn't going to come back to bite them later on.
So I see it as two different concepts. With psychological safety, I believe we usually talk about at least two levels. One level is the level where we work very deliberately at Mentimeter with creating an inclusive culture where everyone feels valued and welcomed, respected, where we build a diverse team and so on. That safety for me is just the beginner safety. Like, okay, I feel welcome here. These are friendly people. I can see myself here. And we actually, that is one of our core values, to include everyone. It's also because it's very tied to our product. Our product is a lot about like creating inclusion and transparency and involving people in processes and so on. So that's the base. So a lot of people feel very welcomed when they come to Mentimeter and during their first weeks. However, the real psychological safety, that comes after you actually, let's say, have had different opinions with someone, or when you have are in a conflict about what to do or how to do it, and you're actually like, arguing or having an important conversation that maybe gets a bit heated, and then you manage to have that in a constructive way, where you actually end up understanding each other better and taking a better decision because you got the input from the whole team or everyone. So I would say that the real psychological safety happens when you experience like, oh my God, we had this argument. I actually voiced a contradictory opinion. Is that correct? Contrary opinion. And I'm still here. like people respect me for my competence, and I feel still valued at this company. And so and I think some people think that it's enough with this base layer. It's not. If you really want to have high performing teams, you need to get through that phase where you actually it's called in the model we're using, it's called actually the conflict phase, because there are conflicts around what to do and how to do it. And you need to go through that stage in a constructive way without interpersonal conflicts, where people start to really get irritated on each other's behavior or personality trait or anything like that. And when you have done that, then you have a real trust and real safety in the team. And it's very interesting. We work with a model that's called integrated model of group development, which is developed by a professor called Susan Whelan. And she's been doing research on this for more than 40 years within all industries. And what she sees that when you become, as she says, a stage 3 or stage 4 team, which is when you have the safety, then you can get a performance of 80% compared to only 10 to 20 in the earlier stages. So imagine if you manage to get all your teams to that high performing level, what impact that has on the business and the business output and everything. So this is something we work with in a very structured way at Mentimeter. So our people growth partners, which I would say probably most people call HR business partners, they work closely with the team leads in their departments to help the teams to get to this more high performing stage and facilitate workshops and do analysis of the teams and what they need.
And so do you track, so this has different phases to it. So do you track where each team is on their journey and what phase they're in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So each of your people managers or your HR consultants know where they're consulting and how to lead them down the path. Okay.
Yeah. It's important, though, that we view the HR team more as catalyzers of the conversations and facilitators, but it's still the team lead that needs to own it, that needs to lead the team in the phase they are in and so on. So for me, that's super important. So it never ends up being like, let's ask HR to fix this. We really want our leaders to lead by example and own the performance part.
And there's so much conflict in organizations today that I suspect our HR pros are really going to head to Google right now and look up Susan Whelan's process. And can you share the name of that process again from Professor Susan Whelan?
Yes, so it's called the integrated model of group development. So it's the only model that's actually validated and verified in research that shows how a team is developing through different stages.
Fantastic. Fantastic. We had Dr. Matt Pepsel on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about how most organizations, only 35% of organizations actually align their corporate strategy to their talent strategy. And you are definitely one of the 35% that stand out, because clearly, as I hear you talk, it's one of those things where you are living the values that are outcomes of your strategy within your organization, which is incredible to hear and to witness. So your company, so taking that one step further, your company culture is extremely dedicated to building this sense of team, so much that you work it into your budget. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the quarterly budget and some other outcomes of that?
Of course. So I can just go back a bit why this is so important to us. So basically, I think it's super interesting in startups how the founders is really impacting both the culture and, of course, the product. So when we work with a tech product or a SaaS product as Mentimeter. So for us, include everyone has been with us from the start, and also having fun. So those are two of our core values. And that has impacted our culture and what we believe in. So, and also it's the base of the product, because so Mentimeter is helping a lot of organizations globally to basically build more efficient teams, to make sure that you have a transparent conversation around an important topics, to make sure that you really grasp the intelligence of the group and get input from everyone before you take a decision, and like more engaging learning experiences and all that. So, I mean, of course, we also then need to, embody that in our own culture, but also I would say it just comes naturally for us because our product is about that. So of course our own culture is about that. So we believe a lot in the intelligence of the group. So I think that, so for example, we believe that the power of together, and that a team is stronger than the units separately. So like 1 + 1 = 3. And we also know that there's a lot of things going on in group development and group psychology that is hindering a team to become high performing, as you mentioned, like a lot of conflicts and so on. And we know also that, like, for example, building deep relationships is very important. If you want to work with complex tasks and solve them, you need deeper relationship than if you work with more superficial tasks. And I would say working in this environment is complex. So then our relationships needs to be deep. So that's the rationale behind having a team building budget. So each team has an amount of money that they should spend each quarter in team development. And then they decide together with their team what they want to do. But usually it's a mix of discussing business things. So what do we need to discuss as a team? Maybe it's our strategy or ways of working, or our processes, like something that has to do, or roles and responsibilities or something like that. It's a mix of that, but also having fun together and just be somewhere else. And, so, I mean, I'm just amazed. I'm just following the Slack channels and seeing what everyone is doing. So it can be a big variation of things.
Can you give us an example of maybe one of the activities or group activities that your teams have leveraged recently?
Of course. I mean, I think one thing we learned is to always have a neutral facilitator that is facilitating conversations. So that is actually something that we usually spend a bit of the budget on, to have someone coming in externally and lead the process, which also is very good for the team lead or the manager, because then they can instead participate in the conversation instead of like leading the conversation. And it also equals out the power dynamics and a bunch of things. So that is actually one thing we use the budget for. But I mean, people have been going to cooking classes, they have been doing, when you do pottery, they have I don't know, just having dinner at some team members' place. yeah, we went with one team to an island outside, kayaking. There's whatever you can imagine.
Wow. I have a feeling you're going to have a lot of applications
Yeah.
after our listeners,
Yes,
after
please.
this goes live. I love it. Now, you also have this incredible initiative. I don't know if you call it an initiative at your organization that helps your company become more resilient. And it involves people moving. Can you tell our listeners about that program?
Of course. So for 6 years now, and we've only been operating for 8 years, we once a month each year move our office to another city. So and this is, so just take that in.
The entire
So
company moves to a different
the entire
city.
company. Yes. So now, for example, when we are around 300 here in Stockholm, we will move those 300 somewhere else in the beginning of next year. And we have been to different cities. So we've been to, or different countries. So Spain, we have been to Italy, and people are very excited about where we're going next. So last year we were in Austria, in Vienna. And the idea here is what you mentioned, resilience. So if we look at resilience from a more holistic perspective, what is that? So it's a bunch of things. So one thing is to build, as I talked about before, togetherness and relationships. Because we are more resilient if we feel, as we talked about earlier, safe in the group, but also we feel that we got the support, we got each other's back in a way. And we know that if we're deepening relationships, we will be more resilient. People will cope better with stress, and they will dare to be more vulnerable with their team or their manager if they are feeling stressed, or like that kind of like health aspect of it. Then we also know that it's very resilient to have an engaged and motivated engaged and motivated employees. So this is also a time where we have a lot of fun together, and it's very creative and innovative to be somewhere else. We're like disrupting ourselves and doing things in a bit different way just because we are in a different place. And we also know that happy people are like happiness and performance relate. So if people are more happy and enjoying life and feeling grateful, they will also perform better. So of course, there's a performance aspect of this also. And then I think the last part is the stress test of the business. So we think that if we manage to move our whole business somewhere else, the only thing people bring is their computer and they have Wi-Fi. And if we can just continue to operate, then we have stress test our business, because then we know that all our systems are in the cloud. Everyone has communication channels, no matter where they are situated, and so on. So when COVID hit, actually, it was not a big thing for us because we had been hit by COVID before, when everyone had to move to a different city. So we just okay, we'll have Zoom meetings instead. And then everyone were still communicating a lot digitally, and we just continued that. Of course, we had to learn a few things, but it was not very dramatic. And I think actually our relocation concept, as we call it, helped us with that. So that's the idea. And one important thing is that it's not a conference or an event. Actually, nothing special happens during this month. It's business as usual. So I have the same meetings as I have normally, but I just have it somewhere else, and with everything that goes with that in a new surrounding. And then it's optional, so people can join for 1 week or 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and usually that depends on life situation and a lot of things. But all in all, this is a very appreciated thing that we're doing. The reason we can do it is because we're also our financials are in a very good shape. So otherwise, I mean, it's also a bit of a celebration that we have succeeded.
Yeah, because that would be my next question. I'm sure there's a lot of HR pros listening today that are saying, okay, this sounds fun. This is a way to increase resilience of our organization, increase productivity, engagement, relationships. There's so many benefits to this, but there's also a cost. So what's the ROI on this? Or if someone's going to consider doing something this big, how did you ever sell it in the first place? And has the ROI shown itself?
Yeah. So, I mean, we started with this when we were 8 employees, so we never had to sell it to anyone. And then we just, continued. But of course, I mean, we're getting a lot of questions like this. And I think that, so first of all, it's very expensive actually to do events. Like if you want to do any kind of event with your company, it is expensive. If you want to take everyone, like fully designed for 3 days with 2 nights, or you use an event agency, whatever, like that is expensive. So we actually, because we have this size of this project, and we're also going in when hotels are not completely booked, like January or February in Europe, we can actually get do this as a quite low cost per employee. So as we see it, we just take a lot of other type of money that you otherwise do, like some learning and development money and some, whatever event that other corporations have money, and put it just in one box instead. That gives a lot. So I would say that we get a very good deal to be the whole company at one place for 30 days. So that's one thing. The ROI, it's connected to all the things we already talked about, like the engagement. We have very low turnover at Mentimeter, so people stay many years, and we have low sick rates. There's a bunch of things we can see. Of course, it's not only because of this; it's because of everything we do within people and culture. But this is has a significant impact.
Wow. I think you've just inspired
a
whole bunch of HR. Pardon?
Yeah, no, employer branding. Actually, that's not at all on our list on why we're doing it. But of course, I mean, people get super curious, and it's driving a lot of recruitments.
Oh, I suspect you're going to see a lot more after this podcast goes live. Okay, so we unfortunately are coming to the end of our podcast. And one of the activities that we do at the end that is a crowd favorite is something called rapid fire questions. So these are 1-sentence questions with 1-sentence answers so that our audience gets to know you better. Are you willing to play?
Yes. Was this in the pre-read? No? I'm ready.
They're easy. They're easy. All right. Question number 1. What's the biggest challenge you're facing as an HR leader today?
Yes. So I believe that the VUCA world, that everything is quite unsteady, all in the world today, is the biggest challenge for me as an HR leader.
What are bad recommendations you hear HR being passed off as best practices?
Saying to lead, having this leadership mantra, don't give me problems, don't give me solutions. I think it's the opposite.
What's your first 90-day playbook as a new head of HR? What would you recommend they focus on their first 90 days in the job?
Understand the business, understand current people and culture activities and how they correlate to the business, and then just be out there, talk to people, listen to people, and ask them about their needs.
When you get overwhelmed, how do you refocus?
I do something completely different. Go to a yoga class or drink wine.
Or drink wine. If you could have your own billboard that would reach millions of people, What would your message be?
Say yes.
What advice would you give to someone just starting out in HR?
To learn a lot about how our brain works and human psychology and behavior, instead of focusing too much on like laws and admin.
And I guess that leads me to my last question. What's the main takeaway that you would like our audience to know today?
Invest in creating real psychological safety and use methods that are validated by research.
Today, we have been joined by Anna Gullstrand, Chief People and Culture Officer at Mentimeter. Thank you again so much for joining me, Anna. It has been such a pleasure.
Thank you, likewise.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for watching. We would love it if you shared your thoughts on any of the topics we discussed in the comments below. And if you got value from the video, it would mean the world to us if you hit the like button and subscribe to the HR Morning channel. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Voices of HR.